The dead send dreams. Mama Ana arrived from the island a few weeks before her mother would die, urged by her to leave the deathbed and come care for us. She died on my birthday. The phone ringing so early, it could only be bad news. I'd been dreaming. I was standing on a crowded sidewalk with my little cousin Josh. I looked across a 6-lane highway at another crowded sidewalk. We attempted to cross, but Mama Ana's mother screamed from the other side, "No, no cruces." Then I grabbed Josh's arm. A week or two later, he'd be mauled by a Rottweiler and survive.
Mm. Hey, welcome to Brown Girl Book Lover. I'm Leslie Murray. It's National Poetry Month, and today we're featuring amazing poets you should be knowing about. I have Roberto Carlos Garcia here, and we're talking about his poetry collection, What Can I Tell You? Roberto, welcome to Brown Girl Book Lover.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Tell us about your poetry collection.
So this is selected poems, which means that there are poems selected from my first 3 poetry collections. 2016, 2018, and 2020, respectively. And so in 2024, I have an essay collection coming out, and I have some other prose projects in the mix. So I figured, my publisher figured it would be a good idea to have a selected poems out there. So if somebody, wants to sample the work over a period of time while I'm off writing essays and novels, etc., that I think, it would be a good idea in conversation. So that's what it's about. So it really kind of tracks, my poetry writing from 2016 up until, my most recent collection, Elegies.
Okay. And what, so because in this collection, you have all of your poems, what poem do you feel in this collection, I know this is going to be tough, that you feel like it's best representing you today, Roberto, as he sits here with me today?
The title of the collection is What Can I Tell You? And it comes from one of the poems, which is an Ars Poetica, basically a poem about writing poetry. Mm-hmm. And if I think any poem does that, I think says where I'm at now, it is that poem.
Mm-hmm. And why so?
Because it really gets into the struggle of writing or any creative process. How, when it's going great, you love it. When it's rewarding you, it's fantastic. You have the book in your hand. You're like, yes, I did it. But then every day there's that call to the page that you wrestle with. And so the poem is talking about that. The act of writing or of creating art, it's like you're dealing with a kind of spiritual lover almost, and that lover can jilt you, or that lover can embrace you, or, decide, what, I'm going to give him the stank face today. You know what I mean? Or I'm going to have him questioning, what's the matter? Why are you treating me like this? Why are you you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I think that's why that's the case.
Can you read that poem for us?
Yes, definitely. Page 25. What can I tell you? An Ars Poetica. I confess. From you, I learned sweat is poison as well as nectar, and there is no good word for how I linger as you exhale. I confess, I am a cracked mirror, and you are a stone, a bird, starlight tickling the fractures. From you, I learned jilting doesn't require stepping away. I confess, I drink your furious glow like the color black, like a poet whose mouth is a bucket, whose head is an ocean of roses.
Wow, that's really beautiful.
Thank you.
The thing is that if I read this, I would never think about it as the struggle of writing. How did you confuse us?
I think that because it's so personal, I guess it sounds so personal and is unaddressed to someone,
Mm-hmm.
it is very easy to, I guess, make that confusion or to have that confusion. But the giveaway, I think, is an ars poetica.
You were just talking about like that your culture that you came from, you feel is very anti-Black, and there have been this radical movement of Afro-Latinx, like even like in February, WNYC celebrated like Black history, but they paid a particular focus to Afro-Latinos, which was like great, and it's just so new, right? And I love that there's these discussions that we've been having in our circle about like anti-Blackness and what it means to be Afro-Latino, Afro-dis, but now it's coming into the mainstream that everyone is discussing it.
Yes.
And it's just like it's such these important conversations for all of us to have and listen to.
Agreed. Because I think it was way past time that a lot of us just come home to the motherland, that is Africa, and embrace that. Because, one of the things that I'll talk to people, and I tell them, I'm the result of colonialism.
Mm-hmm.
The whole island flag, the whole thing, you know what I mean? It's all the result of colonialism, and it has a very particular history, right? With a very particular group of people, okay, Africans through the transatlantic slave trade. I have to recognize how my history shapes my experience right now. Can't pretend that that's not there. You know what I mean? And I need to embrace it and understand it and know it. So it fills my heart like with tremendous joy, because when I was a kid, there wasn't really that like it is right now.
Yeah.
It wasn't. You had family members sometimes straight up like, change that haircut. You look too Black. Get out the sun. You look too Black. Like, you know what I mean? Friends of family members, family members of friends of mine, like, don't hang out with that kid. He's Black. Don't hang out with him. Like, it was that's how it was. So you not only are you dealing with it in I say allegedly your own Latinx culture, because it's not. I don't, but then you're dealing with it out in the world as well. So I think we, thankfully, the generation that's out here now, representing or whatever, right, had those experiences, and then we're not going back. Like, you know what I mean? Our kids and their kids, they're gonna know the reality, because then also if you look at the history of DR, there are several elements of the history that are pro-Black, pro-Caribbean unity, and establishing connections to become stronger against the Western powers, right? So that's an aspect that, unfortunately, the propaganda that is anti-Black, quiets down. You really got to do your research to find that.
Yeah.
And understand that. You know what I mean? But it's there also. So yeah, we have no excuses. I think we have no excuses. So it's fantastic that we're seeing it, and we need to keep doing more,
Yeah, absolutely.
Laying that groundwork.
Absolutely.
I guess demonstrate how while things change, a lot of times they don't change. Right? And so this poem is called Duplicity.
Oh my God.
Hard truth.
I have that organ.
Nice. Duplicity. Hard truth. First thing I do as I breathe into a room is search for brown and Black faces, bobbing in America's post-racial waters. I swim peripheral glances, backstroke being ignored, wade on a chair in a corner of the room and chat up the help until Some not brown or black one tosses me an integration lifeline. Hard truth. Light and dark sparkle the waters like tinsel. Pretty chimera. No one really has to. Does anyone really have to talk to me?
Thank you for that poem. You know, I was speaking to Jose on Friday, and you know, he has a poem just like this, similar, right? And talking about like being in this room where sometimes it's like there's only a few brown and black faces, right? And the people who are actually brown and black, they're to help.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but sometimes you're in this room and you're like, oh, there are no brown faces, but you're like, the help is there.
Yeah,
right?
they are the brown faces.
They're not like at the center, but they're there and they should be counted. And how sometimes even like you as a brown or black person in those spaces tend to neglect. You see them, but you tend to neglect the people who look like you because they're not, you know, they're not in the center, right?
Yeah,
they're just at the margins.
You building a hierarchy in your mind.
Yes.
They're not on your level, so you're not, you're not talking to them. But no, not me. That's the first thing I see. And you know, I've been like my grandmother would say, the fly in the glass of milk, so to speak, right? Just standing there and like wondering, okay, you know, who do I do? Do I go up to somebody and make it an awkward conversation? Or, you know, when somebody comes and says, hey, would you like an hors d'oeuvre? Would you like this? I'm like, yeah, listen, thanks a lot. Wow, nice party, right? Like, this is, you guys always like, and before you know it, like, we're all just chit-chatting and they give me a knowing look. You know? It's just something I've always, you know, wanted to write about, but I'm like, nah, you know, maybe I'm just going to keep this for me. There was a lady, she was an older lady, and her job was to pick up the plates and the glasses and stuff, you know? And the whole night I had been chit-chatting with her, you know, and she was like, listen, go talk to some people. You worked hard. You worked hard to be here. Make sure they know you're here. You know what I mean? And I was like, oh, man, you know? Because up to that point, I was like, oh, you know, who am I going to talk to? You know, what am I going to say?
Yeah.
It's still fascinating. I was at a writers' conference, and it was maybe like, I mean, it was hundreds of people, and there might have been 4 of us in the room, you know? And I'm looking like, man, come over here and talk to me. You know what I mean? I'm like, come on. And I remember this poet, she, you know, finally, she was working with me at our table. And I remember I was like, I was waiting to see when you were going to come and say something to me. I was like, why when we're in spaces like this, we try like not to purposely come together and talk to each other, right? If we are in a predominantly white space, we got to seek each other out.
Yeah.
You know? We can't pretend like, hey, we're trying to mingle, you know, like, no, let's get comfortable together. Please, let's end it because we can't, you know? So yeah, this poem came really from finding myself in those spaces a lot more. You know, as I moved along, what does JC say? You know, the higher up I went, the less black faces I saw. So one of the things that I realized as I was working on the 3rd book is like how many elegies I had sprinkled in the first 2 books. It was weird realization.
Yeah, I saw that a lot of elegies.
Yeah, my 3rd collection is called Elegies, and it was really dedicated to my grandmother after she passed from Alzheimer's. But there's been a lot of losses, you know, and so they just sprinkled out throughout all 3 books. Which is something I wasn't thinking about at the time.
So 1 second, do you think with like the elegies, do you think, and in the book, do you think it signals the sign of sadness or does it signal something else?
Yes and yes. I think it's sadness. I think it's, you know, grief. I think it's remembering. And I think it's processing too. You know, I'm a firm believer that if you're sad and if you're experiencing grief, what helps you process it is sad music, sad poems, sad movies. Cry it out. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you sad? Don't stop listening to that sad music. No, shut up. Why? Like, I'm sad. I want sad music. Like, this is what's gonna help me. Eventually, I'm gonna say, okay, no more sad songs. It's time to get up. Now it's time to play Celia Cruz, or you know what I mean. Now it's time to get up. So that's why it's like it's okay, you know, that's in there. But I think in this one, there's a lot of it's meditating. There's a lot of meditating. Right? There's sadness. There's meditating. There's remembering, and I think that grief is so much of that. Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Grief is a meditation.
I mean, you know, and this is how, like, you never let go of it, right? It just becomes, you just learn to manage it better. My little sister sitting there, she's been gone 6 years now. Felt her caress like autumn winds, the kind that don't go back empty-handed. And I believed in spring resurrection, but the leaves cried like poppy fields and she floated away. Autumn's ruse, the artifice of leaves falling from trees. I can't name it. Oh. And I think the poem's also a haunting.
Yeah.
It's also like grief is also a haunting.
Yeah.
That the source of your grief and their memory and who they were haunts you, right?
Roberto Carlos Garcia. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for sharing your poems. I really appreciate you. And thank you, Keisha, for putting us in touch. This is
absolutely awesome. Shout out to Keisha Gay Anderson, very super duper talented poet. And she always has a very insightful, thoughtful, kind word for you. Go to her Instagram, go to her Facebook, check her out, because she's doing wonderful things.
She's cool. And she's my neighbor.